it's kind of a feature race, I think, for me. It's an 80-minute endurance race for our Amon Cup for GT40s. And it's one that I've been looking forward to since it was announced, and that was quite a while ago. So I've been looking forward to this race for a few weeks, if not months, in fact. And to be honest, a grid of... We're just starting out, but a grid of 11 Ford GT40s on any racetrack is quite a sight to behold. And oak trees start from little acorns, don't they? So this is a start, and it's going to be a fabulous race with some teams electing once again 2 drivers, other teams or cars I should say only having 1. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to have an element of tactics.
Yeah, just 3 cars with solo drivers, and here we are with the starting grid for the last race. So we will have to have an update.
So it is. That caught me out.
So we'll hopefully see the starting grid for the Amon Cup race. Just to tell you while we're waiting for that this is a rolling start again for this race, and the pit stop window, being an 80-minute race, will be between 30 minutes and 50 minutes. So once again, a 20-minute window opening at 30 minutes, and the minimum stationary time in the pit's the same, 60 seconds, with the extra 15 second allowance for getting in and out of the pits, which is carefully timed by the timekeepers, because if they do it quicker than that, it means they've been speeding in the pit lane. So we should be having, here we go, the grid for the Amon Cup, which is headed by number 10, Ollie Bryant, who we've seen out already racing, and in fact Andrew interviewed him. Ollie Bryant, number 10, on pole position. Then we've got the James Hansen and Andy Newell car on the front row, and James Hansen will start. James Hansen will start in that car. On the second row we've got James Cottingham and Andrew Smith, a familiar pairing. James Cottingham will start. And on the alongside on the second row is David Cuff and Harvey Stanley. You've seen Harvey Stanley interviewed already by Andrew. Harvey Stanley will take the wheel first. Then on to the third row we've got a pairing of Miles Griffiths and Gordon Shedden. That's a very strong pairing. Gordon Shedden will take the wheel first. Then alongside is Bernardo Hartogs and Will Nuttall. Bernardo Hartogs will take the wheel first. And then next on the grid in 7th place on row 4 is Tarek Mahmood and Nigel Greensaul. Tarek Mahmood will start, and then it's the solo driven car of Marcus Euenhausen Seerstorpt, who we've seen before racing in the Jaguar race. And then completing the grid we've got the Richard Mines Chris Lillingston Price car, which will be started by Richard Mines, and alongside will be Mike Thorne and Robert Raw, and Robert Raw will take the wheel first. And completing the grid is Tony Wood, number 5. Tony Wood, a quick driver, but he ended up in the gravel at McLean's in qualifying and didn't really set a representative time as the cars come out onto the track.
So the Amon Cup for GT40s about to get underway. 80 minutes, as Alistair mentioned, and in honour of Chris Amon, of course, we named this the Amon Cup for GT40s. Chris Amon, a name synonymous with this mark and this make, and perhaps this period of motor racing brought to a wider audience through the movie Le Mans 66, where I've had people who are not interested in race cars at all have been asking me questions about this period of racing. This is a rolling start, and the safety car, the pace car, rolls into the pit lane and allows Ollie Bryant and the number 15 of Newell and Hansen. Yes, Alistair and I just take our cans off for a moment just to hear that beautiful noise. Now down into the lead has got Cottingham and Smith. Have we got starting drivers, by the way? Is it James Cottingham?
Yeah, it is James Cottingham. Yeah,
that was a brilliant start down the inside and just caught everybody by surprise, and he hangs on to that lead down through the craters and into the old hairpin for the first time.
And it's another DK Engineering driver in third place, because it's Harvey Stanley, and in between them is Ollie Bryant in the family car, the family GT40. And they go up the hill now through Schwantz. So leading is James Cottingham, in second place is Ollie Bryant, third is Harvey Stanley. We'll see who else comes through when we get the wider shot on the screen with
you could tell when James went down the inside. He's good mates with Ollie Bryant. They were sharing a car earlier, and Ollie just didn't react in a very aggressive way. And I think discretion being the better part of valour, especially when you're driving a GT40 and the race is 80 minutes long.
Yes.
There's just no need, is there? And that's what we're seeing. One lap completed.
And they come across the line, and it is indeed James Cottingham who leads from Ollie Bryant, but Ollie Bryant being challenged on the inside by Harvey Stanley, but doesn't get through. But there's a little bit of dust down on the road there where they've cleared up that previous incident, and Harvey Stanley just a little bit sideways there. In fourth place is the Gordon Shedden Miles Griffiths car, which is being started by British touring car driver and 3 times British touring car champion Gordon Shedden, who of course is back out in the series this year in the Honda Civic. So Gordon Shedden next weekend will be putting his other hat on, as it were, and becoming a professional racing driver again. And
he was right on the pace, going fastest on the media day, and he's heading the timing sheet, so everybody in touring cars beware. Shedden's on a mission, and it's great to see him back in the series in the UK.
Ollie Bryant really having to work very hard to keep Harvey Stanley behind him as they went through Coppice. They're coming down into the chicane once again, and James Cottingham it is who still leads, and these first 4 cars very close together indeed, with Ollie Bryant in second, Harvey Stanley in third, Gordon Shedden in fourth. Now in fifth place is the James Hansen Andy Newell car, started by James Hansen. That's the white car with the stripe, and that's just slightly off the back of this lead pack at the moment. But look at them all drifting and squirming around on power.
Clearly not the fastest way though, Alistair, as that's allowed Gordon Shedden right onto the tail of the number 2, and he has to be very aware of that. The number 7 has pulled off to the side. That's the Thorne and Robert Rowe car.
That looks like a spin, doesn't it?
Yeah, where is that exactly?
That could have been Coppice. It looked like it was at the top of the hill somewhere.
Well, we're into McLean's
so they should,
now.
Yeah.
It's the chicane.
It is indeed the chicane.
And indeed, it was a spin.
Indeed, it was a spin.
Good
and indeed,
spot.
We're going to have local yellows initially, and wait for the clerk of the course to make a decision. But it's right on the outside of the circuit at the chicane. Here come the leaders. They're under yellow flag. That means no overtaking once you pass the first of those yellow flags, so there'll be no overtaking into the chicane. Drivers keeping close together, and in fact that's allowed Gordon Shedden and James Hansen just to close up slightly. Now they're back to full speed again. We are racing around the rest of the track. It's just that one section that is neutralised. Hard work going on there from Harvey Stanley in the number 2 GT40 as they come down through. What a wonderful sight, sliding their way down, drifting through the Craner curves.
GT40s as well, a field of them. We're very honoured and privileged to be able to be at Donington Park for this race, but I'm hoping that we're bringing this Donington Historic Festival to you via our live stream, and a big thanks to Deaky Engineering to allow that to happen, and their support along with Motor Racing Legends and the Royal Automobile Club have enabled us to put on this live stream and bring the event to you, as Harvey Stanley continues to pressure that number 10 car of Ollie Bryant ahead of him. Ollie, to me though, just looks so calm and composed, doesn't he? He's not been pressured into making any kind of mistake, and I'm kind of wondering just what the plan is. Why is he letting James get away? Maybe he hasn't got an answer.
Oh, maybe he knows that the car will suffer with maybe tyre or brake wear later on. Now look, Harvey Stanley looking for the outside line, but Ollie stays on the inside and makes his way down now to Hollywood. Just lets the back drift out a little on power as he exits Redgate, and look where Gordon Shedden is, right there behind them in fourth place, coming down into the old hairpin. And sorry, just to say that Gordon Shedden said this morning, if we weren't on live stream then, that he's when Andrew said, "Have you driven this car before?" He said yes at Spa.
I was just about to say.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I was just about to say that very thing. We're connecting telepathically, Alistair. Been together all day and we're already connecting. I was just about to say that, and he won at Spa in that car.
Yeah.
So he's familiar with the car. He knows the car. And you know what? When you've got a driver like that, a professional driver like Gordon Shedden, you can pretty much plug him into anything. I remember we plugged him into our Renault Clio up at Knockhill as he was a friend of Derek Pierce, and within about 5 laps he was going 2 seconds quicker than the car had ever gone. He's just a force of nature, as we say. 1 hour and 13 minutes remaining, and the first 4 cars are still pretty much nose to tail across the line, as we've got another car spinning off, and that's the Tariq Mahmood, Nigel Greensaul. Tariq Mahmood at the wheel, I believe.
Yep.
And Tariq just getting the car. Now that's Coppice, so it looks like he spun that car on the brakes, actually, on the entry to Coppice, but he's no harm, no foul. He's regained the track and he's on his way.
Down into the old hairpin once again. Ollie Bryant just letting the back step out on the brakes as he turns in just to get the car rotated, and then he goes up the hill, but all the time he can see the back end of the GT40 in front of him just easing away as James Cottingham, a great drive from James. Look at that, Ollie's gone a little wide there, and Harvey Stanley sniffs an opportunity, but no, he drops in behind again as they go up to Coppice.
I've just realised who Harvey Stanley is. Harvey Stanley from DK.
Yeah.
These are all good mates.
Yeah, of course.
First, second and third, they're all good mates. They're having a ball, and Gordon Shedden's wanting to join in because he's going past. He's going past Ollie Bryant now, as did Harvey Stanley.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure whether Ollie Bryant is running 100%, because Harvey Stanley was able to just drive past him on the straight there. Now Gordon Shedden's on the tail of Harvey Stanley, who is pushing. You can tell he's pushing by the way the car's squirming underneath him on the brakes. So a change for position. James Cottingham leads, Harvey Stanley is in second, now Gordon Shedden is third, and looking very, very racy indeed. That's a very, very loose number 2 Ford GT40 of Harvey Stanley.
And a much wider line from Harvey Stanley. We saw that in an earlier race where one car was taking a wider line through the old hairpin and the other car hitting the curbing on the inside. Gordon Shedden goes for the tight line. Now he's coming up to Matt Neal. Yes, in fact, Harvey Stanley goes wide again at McLean's. I was just about to say they're coming up to the Matt Neal overtaking place, which Gordon Shedden will know all about, having been teammates with Matt Neal for some years in the Honda BTCC team, but he doesn't manage to get through, so Harvey Stanley gets away with that one. Now they're coming down the long straight, over the crest, down into the braking area. Harvey just making his car as wide as he can, going into the chicane, lets the back step out, so will that give Shedden a chance on the exit?
Oh, sorry to talk over you there, Brad, that was just instinctively the broad power slide from Harvey Stanley in that number 2. All right, it's allowed Gordon Shedden to move up alongside, and Harvey Stanley had to take the defensive line, but we're absolutely loving this. We've got an hour and 10 minutes of this remaining, everybody, so settle in and just enjoy the sight of these GT40s being raced absolutely on the limit, absolutely on the edge. Harvey Stanley turns in, just catches the slide. Gordon Shedden looks a lot tidier. If anything, the car looks a little more neutral than the number 2 car ahead of him. The number 2 car looks like it's quite oversteery, and I'm not sure whether it's the driver inducing that.
Yeah, it's definitely very much more sideways there, even into McLean's than Shedden. Brake lights come on as they come up the hill to Coppice, take the second apex as they go on to the straight, and once again Harvey Stanley very wide, but Gordon Shedden suddenly lost a little bit of ground there, and look, Ollie Bryant still in the background, not lost touch. It's
kind of what happened to Ollie Bryant a couple of laps ago, which lost him those 2 places, and exactly the same. Maybe, because of the camera angle, he got really sideways out of Coppice, and that's the important corner here at Donington Park. You've got to be very, very clean, using all the momentum you're going to carry down the straight, and we're seeing a battle now breaking up between the number 30, and that's Marcus Oenhausen Seerstorff, and he's battling against the number 5 of that's Tony Wood. And was it Tony didn't have a very good qualifying?
No, he ended up in the gravel at McLean's.
That's right.
And only did 4 laps, so didn't really get a representative time in. Very sideways from Oenhausen Seerstorff there as they went through Redgate, coming down the hill now.
Well, Tony Wood's made some progress. He started in 11th at the back of the field. He's up to 7th and challenging for 6th.
Although he's dropped back a little bit, hasn't he? From
yes, he lost out a little bit there.
Marcus as he came out of the old hairpin. Now they're coming up the hill through the left-hander at Schwantz, which leads into the braking area for McLean's. Turn to the right. Nice drift as he comes through. Lovely sound.
Really is.
From the V8 engine in the back of these cars, and now going through Coppice. Meantime, back with our second place battle.
And just seeing a field of these GT40s just brings to mind, I mean, the way that Ford went about their return to Le Mans with the Ford GTE and the Ford GT in the GTE category, they really did capture the visual aesthetics of this original.
A bad lap from James Cottingham there, and you can see he's being caught by, well, we're off that picture now, but we could see before we cut away that the second and third place cars are now right behind Cottingham.
Yeah.
He lost a second on that lap. Wonder if that's a bit of lappery perhaps. We don't know, we didn't see it.
I've also noticed, Alistair, that there was tyre smoke coming from the front right wheel arch of the Shedden car every time he comes through the corners, and it's if the car's bottoming and we're getting some tyre rub on the inside of the wheel arch on that front right. We'll keep an eye on that as we're back with the leaders now on the back straight towards the chicane. Everything looking settled. James Cottingham leads, Harvey Stanley second, Gordon Shedden third. We've lost Ollie Bryan a little bit. He's slipped back about 2.5 seconds. Back with that battle now between Mahmoud, a recovering Tariq Mahmoud, and behind him is the number 18. They're down in 9th and 10th spot as they go through the Craner curves. And the number 18 is the number 18 is not on my entry list.
It's Bernardo Hartogs.
That's the one, yes.
Who will hand over to Will Nuttall. And both those cars actually have got the gurney bubble that Andrew referred to earlier when he was saying how the GT40 got its name, which is that it's 40 inches high, except when you put the gurney bubble on it, which is to allow for the taller drivers. And that's a good shot there from the side of James Cottingham's car. And those 3 leaders have all closed up now. Gordon Shedden, unsurprisingly, not keen to let them get away, so he's right there in 3rd place. So we've got coming down the straight James Cottingham leading, Harvey Stanley in 2nd place, and 3rd Gordon Shedden into the chicane. And
these 3 have pulled away from Ollie Bryan. He's drifted back in 4th spot. He's now just over 3.5 seconds, so he's losing about a second a lap as the leaders are into back markers, and a challenge for second there with Harvey Stanley having to defend. He's got Gordon Shedden to his left, got a back marker, those back markers that we were watching there, the Hartogs and Mahmoud battle. Into the pits has come Tony Wood, the number 5, off shot, but that lead battle there hasn't changed. Down the inside into the old hairpin, and Tariq Mahmoud keeps well out of the way of these leaders. No change. Cottingham leads, Stanley second, Shedden third, up towards McLean's, and that number 2 of Harvey Stanley still looks to be very, very loose. And will this allow Shedden to get alongside? No, he slots him behind on the run up to Coppice. All important, very defensive line there from Harvey Stanley, and Gordon Shedden fell into line out onto the back straight. Not sure he's got the momentum because Harvey Stanley kept his foot right in, and he's got the run down to the chicane. Shedden moves to the right, just shows that silver and yellow nose of the number 37 right in the rear view mirrors on the doors of the number 2. Does the same into Redgate as we head into Redgate and it all settles down. Let's pop down to the pits for a bit. Peace from Andrew.
That's some great racing there, so I'm going to keep it very quick. The Tony Wood car has got a problem with the engine. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but what great racing's going on out there. So Tony Wood, I don't think is going to be going back into the race. We'll see, but an engine problem for the red and white car.
Thank you, Andrew. And that's unfortunate. They had a problem in qualifying that had the car starting at the back of the grid, put them off at McLean's, and the saying is, it doesn't rain but it pours. Talking of which, we did have some rain forecast, but it's held off, and let's hope it holds off for another hour. We don't want anything spoiling this great race we've got right now. 1 hour and 3 minutes, so we've still got 63 minutes, Alistair, and I'm going to say it, there's still a long way to go, which there is.
It's a long race, they say. It is 80 minutes for these cars that were racing at Le Mans in the early, mid to late 60s. 1964 was the first time they were entered at Le Mans, and we've got the leaders coming down now into Redgate, and still James Cottingham leads, but he must be looking in his mirrors thinking, what have I got to do to get away from Harvey Stanley, who works for DK Engineering, as you saw in the graphic earlier on when Andrew was interviewing him in their display tent. And Gordon Shedden, of course, knows all. There's that smoke. You're absolutely right. It looks like a little bit of tyre rub on the top of the wheel arch. Don't think that'll bother him too much. And Gordon Shedden trying everything he knows to get through. But there's absolutely no way that Gordon is just going to shove the car up the inside and do anything that might cause any damage to these cars. He's a professional driver, and he will make his space and make his way through when he sees the opportunity. And he's just pushing all the time.
And he's got the British Touring Car driver's manual on the passenger seat, which he hasn't opened yet. And as we head down the chicane, he may have just looked at page 7, how to outbrake into the chicane. No, he's closed the BTCC driver's handbook and slotted back in and behaved himself. Let's get down the pits to Andrew. I hear an engine, Andrew.
Cameraman to turn around, and the CRC crew have had a lot of gravel to clear off here. You can see all the mess it's scooped up, but the car there, not one of the front runners, but the guys having a great time with that car, but been off into the gravel. But the marshal's working hard there. Marshal's number one tool, the broom.
He's had that broom 30 years, so 3 shanks and 4 heads. The battle for second continues while we went down to Andrew, and Harvey Stanley gets a big style oversteer sideways slide from McLean's heading up to Coppice. I really do not know how he's maintaining the momentum in that number 2 car to hold back Gordon Shedden, who's driving, in comparison to Harvey Stanley ahead of him, very, very clean indeed. Here he goes. He's going to have a try into the chicane. Or is he? Harvey Stanley, last of the late breakers, Shedden down the inside. Harvey Stanley locks up the brake. They're side by side through the chicane. There really isn't room for that. But somehow they make it out of the chicane without actually touching. Round of applause. And there's Ollie Bryant coming back. Is that because the second and third place cars are tripping one another over, and that's allowing Bryant back in? Or you did say, Alistair, maybe he's looking after his brakes and tyres.
Yeah, brakes.
You did say it.
And who's behind Ollie Bryant? It's James Hansen, who is right behind Ollie Bryant. So we've almost got in the same shot the first 5 cars, because James Cottingham is only 3 seconds up the road from this battle. So it's all keeping very close indeed, given that we're into the last hour of the race. So we've had the 20 minutes and they're still tied together. Harvey Stanley locks up. This could be the moment when Gordon Shedden goes through. We'll have to see when when the camera turns, whether Gordon Shedden managed to hold on to that place. He's got the inside, but no! Harvey Stanley has managed to pull the cat out of the bag and stay in second place. That's amazing driving, and there's the leader. You can see James Cottingham, but these second, third, fourth and fifth place cars all close together now. Gordon Shedden going for that inside line at the chicane again, but he thinks better of it, pulls back in behind Harvey Stanley. this is allowing Ollie Bryant and James Hansen to catch up. Here goes Shedden again. I think this is the best chance he's had into the inside, into Redgate. There's a slower car on the outside, which hopefully will keep well out of the way. Gordon Shedden slides through on the inside of Harvey Stanley as they came into Redgate after 21 minutes of racing.
Fabulous.
What a race.
Fabulous. And Gordon Shedden, full credit, round of applause to both of these drivers to have been able to have raced so closely. And just behind them, Alistair, I'm pretty sure we've had a change for what will be 4th place, with Hansen going ahead of Ollie Bryant.
Certainly looks that way, yep.
And he's catching Harvey as well.
Well, the question is now, can Gordon Shedden pull away from this little battle and start to put pressure on James Cottingham? And there's Ollie Bryant, who's just lost that 4th place, now running in 5th, but not far off the leading group really, so it's still all to play for as they come down to the chicane. Gordon Shedden goes right and left, then Harvey Stanley, then James Hansen, then Ollie Bryant as they come across the line. There's James Cottingham with the headlights ablaze. That looks great, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
As the dust comes in.
Right, 2.7, and there's an overall fastest lap of the race from Gordon Shedden. So Shedden has been uncaged, he's been unleashed, and now we're going to monitor the gap between himself and James Cottingham. James Cottingham leads in the number 23, second is Gordon Shedden in the 37, then there's the number 2 of Harvey Stanley, and then we've got the number 15 of Hansen, who's absolutely catching Jamie Stanley ahead of him, hand over fist. We don't even need a stopwatch to have a look at that. It's about 7/10 on the stopwatch. But he's, I think Jamie Stanley's going to be working very hard. Now then, we haven't mentioned
Harvey Stanley.
Who did I say?
Jamie Stanley.
Sorry, Harvey Stanley.
You're getting mixed up with GT racing.
I am, yeah, Jamie. I know Jamie quite well. We didn't mention the pit stop window, Alistair.
We didn't. No, I did. 30 to 50 minutes.
30 to 50 minutes.
Yep,
so 30 minutes into the race.
Yep.
And then the window closes 50 minutes in.
And it's the same as before. Minimum 60 seconds stationary. So we've got the gaps there on the screen, but that gap first to second is coming down, isn't it? 2.7 on the screen, but at every lap it comes down as Gordon Shedden. You can see now how much Gordon Shedden is closing on James Cottingham.
Yeah, it has. It absolutely has. 1.1 seconds. It was 2.7. So from that little calculation, and there's another fastest lap. He's got the fastest lap down to a 1 minute 15.518. So Gordon Shedden, fastest driver on the track at the moment, and the qualifying time of Ollie Bryant, 1:16.680. So he's underneath the qualifying time. And remember, no refueling, so he's got a chunk of fuel in that car, at least an hour's worth. So we are. That means we're about 16 minutes away from the pit window, aren't we? We've had 25 minutes. So sorry, no, we're about 5 minutes. 5 minutes, of course.
Yeah.
So 5 minutes away before we have to consider those pit stops. Now then, if anything, Cottingham looks to be comfortable with Shedden behind him. We know how difficult Gordon Shedden took. We know how difficult it was to get past Harvey Stanley. Whether or not James Cottingham will prove equally as difficult. Cottingham, I must say, is driving that car, whether it's set up or whether it's driver style, but a lot more neutral style of driving. Certainly Harvey had a massive handful every time, pretty much at every corner. The car was very much out of control. Another puff of smoke I saw from the 37. That's obviously not affecting the performance of the car whatsoever with regards to lap time. But there's no question, Alistair, we've got a race for the lead on our hands just before the pit stop window is about to open up.
Yeah, and we think that the 4 drivers involved in this lead battle are all pretty well balanced in terms of their relative performance. So they may have agreed to split the race in half, which means that they'll stop around 10 minutes into the pit stop window. But on the other hand, they might choose to make a tactical early stop, especially if they've got traffic. But Gordon Shedden takes the lead. Lovely move there, running down into the chicane, just slightly later on the brakes than James Cottingham, and makes that move very clean indeed as they come across the line. So for the first time in the race, we've got Gordon Shedden leading now in car number 37. From second place, James Cottingham, car number 23, as they turn through the red gate. We've had 20 laps completed, and pretty much every one of those 20 laps we've had cars running side by side or trying to get up and past the other. Wonderful example of great historic racing as they come down into the old hairpin. There goes Gordon Shedden in the lead, James Cottingham in second place. We can see a car just behind, and that should be James Hansen, who's up. No, that's a white car, so he's a bit further off.
Let's have a trip down to the pit lane for Andrew Marriott, who's got something for us. Andrew?
Yeah, I've just been talking to the Cottingham crew there, and James will probably stay in the car over the half distance. I just spoke to Andrew Smith, actually, who's going to take the car over. They're going to play it a little bit by ear, see what's going on, but it's likely that their stop won't be exactly at the half distance anyway, so we'll see how that plays out. But how fantastic to see Gordon Shedden in this GT40, owned by Philip Walker, of course, leading the race now. So back to you.
Thanks, Andrew. And yeah, I think we all agree with Andrew there. What a fabulous sight it has been, and also all credit to the likes of Harvey Stanley, who held back Gordon Shedden for pretty much 20-25 minutes of racing before Shedden finally found his way by. We've got a similar situation that's developing for the overall lead of this race. The pit stop window is now open, and we've got 2 cars showing pit stops, but those are cars that have had problems, and they are not in any context to do with the mandatory stop that we mentioned. So just under 52 minutes.
The pit stop window opens just in about 1 minute 50.
Right, I thought it was 55. It's 50, isn't it?
50 minutes, yeah.
Of course, 2 minutes to the window opening.
So there's an opportunity to dive in on the next lap if they want to, or the lap after, but that would be a very early stop, so they may decide to carry on, because of course what they don't know is there going to be a safety car, is there going to be a shower of rain, we don't know, and will that offer an opportunity as we see a change of place there, because that is Harvey Stanley going past, or being passed again, by Ollie Bryant.
Yeah.
So off camera, clearly Ollie Bryant has managed to wheedle his way past Harvey Stanley.
I'm wondering if those rear tyres have gone. He's been, Harvey Stanley with that number 2, he's had in such lurid angles of attack, and all the time he's been, power sliding the car to stay ahead of various other drivers. Now Ollie Bryant, you did say, Alistair, that you suspected that Ollie Bryant was just maybe starting this race off in a conservative sort of way and managing his tyres. Let's see if Andrew can shed any light, if not on that, on something else.
Well, something else. I've just been up on the pit wall with Miles Griffiths, who will be jumping into the car that Gordon Shedden will get out of. And Gordon Shedden will go as long as he can. They're going to leave Gordon Shedden in the car as long as he keeps leading. So that's the plan from the Shedden side of things. So that's interesting.
Yes, it is, and I would certainly, like you said, Alistair, I'd be leaving the pit stop, especially if you're not bothered about how much seat time you get. So Miles Griffiths decided we're going to leave Gordon in as long as possible, and I'd be waiting for that window to close in case we do get a safety car. Now, the likelihood of a safety car with only 11 cars in the field and 10 cars running the chances of that are reduced somewhat. So, but it's still worth the wait, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just in case, you never know.
You just don't know. That's right. There could be an opportunity, and if it doesn't come up, then you've lost nothing. And Gordon Shedden comes in before the pit stop window closes, hands over to Miles Griffiths, who is no slouch. So that car isn't going to be going around the circuit in much different time to Gordon Shedden. So unless Andrew Smith, when he takes over from James Cottingham, and Andy Newell, who has massive amount of experience also, and Ollie Bryant, of course, we know has experience.
Did Andrew say that they're thinking about keeping James Cottingham in the car though and not swapping drivers? I thought that's what Andrew said.
Oh right, yeah.
I think that's what he said. He was very faint, but that might be the case. We'll wait and see, because this isn't professional racing. This is people's pastimes. This is people's leisure time in historic racing. They're having fun driving their pride and joys.
And that looks like James Hansen. Is it catching James Cottingham?
Oh, really?
If we get a shot there, certainly the right colour, but I haven't actually confirmed that with the number.
Well, there's the leader through Schwantz and into McLean's, and then behind them, Cottingham is being caught by. It definitely is.
Absolutely,
there it is. There's the number 15 of Hansen, and he is closing in on James Cottingham as they come through Coppice and out onto that long straight towards the chicane. Now the gap last time by was about a second. It was right on a second. I'm not sure if that's the case, Alistair, as they go into the chicane there. He's closing fractions each time, and I suspect that might be just under a second there across the line as they just flash by underneath us. It is, what is it, 6/10? Yeah.
6, yeah.
So he's going to challenge now, isn't he?
Yeah, so that it should be this lap. He'll be looking for a way through, but we know from the first 20 odd minutes of the race that even Gordon Shedden couldn't find a way past Harvey Stanley, so it's not going to be easy for James Hansen to find a way past James Cottingham, but he'll certainly try as they come down into the old hairpin. Meantime, Gordon Shedden is just easing away. 4.2 was the gap at the line last time around from this car, number 23, James Cottingham. And James Hansen just behind as they come up through Schwantz into McLean's. There is Ollie Bryant in 4th place, and not far behind, Harvey Stanley in 5th place.
He has increased the gap though, hasn't he? Harvey Stanley kind of dropping off the tail of that number 10 Ollie Bryant Ford GT40 there, and Harvey Stanley, after running very, very strongly indeed, in 2nd spot and holding back Gordon Shedden. Gave us some great TV footage to watch. There is the Cottingham number 23, and the gap last time was 6/10 of a second. We don't really need a stopwatch to be precise. It's 5/10 now, so he's took another 1/10 of a second out of him, and I've got to say, James Hansen in that number 15 now is in a position where he's going to try and put pressure on James Cottingham. He's going to want to pressure James Cottingham into perhaps just missing a braking point, having Cottingham make a mistake of sorts. And they are already through and out of the old hairpin as we go back down to the pits for more from Andrew.
Yes, Will Nuttall is now going to climb into the 18 as the Brazilian climbs out of the car, and now you should see this car going really quickly. We've seen Nuttall have a victory already today, but Bernardo from Brazil now out of the car, and this number 18 car, I think, will suddenly be going a lot quicker.
Thanks, Andrew. Down in the pit lane as that pit stop comes to its final stages, and Will Nuttall's got a lot to do. He's down in 9th spot, and he's about 2 laps off the lead, if not 3, by dint of that pit stop. That'll obviously, he'll get at least a couple of laps back during the pit stop phase. But Alistair, I've got to say that no change for that battle for 2nd and 3rd. And James Cottingham continuing to lead James Hansen round in the number 23 and the number 15.
Yes, James Hansen hasn't got the same position in the track as Gordon Shedden had earlier. He's not right behind, so not really in a challenging position, but again, could be strategic. We've still got 44 minutes to go and a pit stop in between, so he's got time. He just wants to follow. And you said it earlier, James Cottingham's driving style is so smooth, isn't it? He rarely seems to get the car too sideways. As into the pits comes the number 7 car, the Robert Raw Mike Thorne car. They're changing drivers now. That car was in the gravel right at the beginning, so it's some way behind, running in 10th place, 14 laps down on the leader.
They had a problem at the start, didn't they?
In the gravel.
Of course, yes. It was in the gravel, wasn't it, where they got delayed. Hence, they are way down the field. But you know what? They're still enjoying their drive.
Oh yes, well, you would, wouldn't you? Really?
Yeah.
Driving a GT40 at
Absolutely.
Donington. And a nice shot there, and we saw it in the previous pit stop camera coverage of the way the doors go into the middle of the car, giving the driver much more room to get in when they're changing in the Le Mans pit stops, which of course weren't timed. They was just as quick as you could do it.
And if you're a very tall driver, as that door closes, you actually trap your head. I've seen a friend of mine do that and trap their head in the as they close the door on themselves.
And that's Tarek Mahmood and Nigel Greensaul's pit stop happening now as well. That's car number 3, so we get that on the camera shot now in the pit lane, and the mechanic just looking at the rear of the car there, just checking, looks like he's checking suspension on that rear left wheel and now on the rear right wheel.
I wouldn't be surprised if he's looking to see if there's any tread left on the tyres. The way these cars are driven, they're they encourage the driver to use the power oversteer. And just look at that V8 in the back of there, the inlet trumpets just underneath the rear deck.
Not a lot of room for the shopping in there, is there? Change of position.
There's a move for second place has finally come off, and James Hansen moves down the inside of James Cottingham at Redgate, but James Cottingham's not happy with that, and he tries to get back on terms through Hollywood and into the Craners. It's not happening though, and the number 15 remains in second place as they turn into the old hairpin. What a sight that is. Some beautiful footage from today's live stream, I've got to say. I'm actually looking forward to watching this during the week and just relaxing and just watching the art that is for GT40s going through the many turns and sweeps here at Donington. It's just been absolutely fabulous to be witness to. But that was a great move. We saw that coming off, and he's just, you know what, Alistair, he just watched for a few laps. He saw where the advantages or the disadvantages, and he kept the pressure on. And that has demoted James Cottingham. None of the top 7 have taken the choice to enter the pits. And the pit window will close with 20 minutes remaining.
11 minutes time, yeah.
Yeah.
So plenty of time.
30 minutes remaining.
It's between 30 minutes remaining. 50 minutes is when it closes, so it's a 20-minute window. So the plenty of time for these. Very wide there from James Cottingham. That's the first time we've seen James out of line, isn't it, really?
Yeah, it is.
He's been so smooth, but just now trying to get back on terms with James Hansen in second place. Meantime, Gordon Shedden is 7.6 seconds up the road now, so he's just keeping the pace up as they come up the hill through Schwantz. James Hansen leads James Cottingham into, you could say, James the first and James the second, couldn't you?
Battle of the James. He will not be wanting, James Cottingham that is, will not be wanting to see James Hansen disappear. He's already seen Gordon Shedden go by and literally disappear. James Shedden's already 7.6 seconds up the road as they crossed the line last time by. And he'll not want that to happen. However, I'm not sure he's got a choice in the matter. Now, I've just seen Gordon Shedden in the number 37 gesticulate to his pit wall. Now, that might be to acknowledge next time in. It's going to be, they're pretty much on half distance.
Yeah.
Which seems fair. Share the drive pretty equally.
Or it might have been a pre-arranged signal that means you're not going to get me out of this car when I come in. I'm staying in.
It may well be. It may well be that.
Down to the old hairpin for James Hansen and James Cottingham, and now as we start to get the camera shot showing us a little bit of dusk. Actually, the sky is still quite bright outside, but we're starting to see the lights on the cars stand out a little bit more now, which gives us even more atmosphere. That these cars, of course, built for long-distance racing, particularly in the case of the Ford GT40, very specifically to win Le Mans and beat Ferrari, which was dramatised in the recent film centred around the 1966 Le Mans, which was the first win for the GT40. It had been there in... and that's a problem for Ollie Bryant, and number 10. Ollie Bryant, who hasn't been in the pits yet, and he's going very slowly down. Is that the run up to Coppice, perhaps? Difficult to pick out exactly where that is.
Yeah, that's a shame, because we did suspect that Ollie was driving a very canny race and just looking after everything. Maybe, Alistair, it was because he didn't quite have the performance of the cars ahead of him, because he's been nursing a problem. So we are one car down. He's pulled that car, very, very clever, very experienced driver, Ollie, and he's pulled that car behind the barriers and out of the way. Well done to him.
And it was on the run up to Coppice, because we've just passed that point, so he must have had a problem running up the hill towards McLean's and just managed to roll it as far as that entrance between the barriers. So we're now looking at Gordon Shedden just flashing his lights at the car ahead, which is about to be lapped, which I think is possibly the Richard Mines car. Don't really get a full shot of it, but it's coming in the pits anyway. And
that gesticulation, Alistair, that we saw a couple of laps ago didn't have anything to do whatsoever with Gordon Shedden coming in the pits. No. Now there's James Cottingham coming through in second. We've lost James Hansen. Where has Hansen gone? Has that Hansen been in the pits?
In the pits, I think, yes.
So he went in the pits the previous lap.
Yes, and we didn't pick it up.
Right, we didn't. We missed that. That was under our noses, yeah. So Hansen out of second. He's the first of the front runners to pit stop, and that has dropped him as we've just noticed him coming out of the pits, and that, I believe, has dropped him to fourth. But he's the first of the cars to pit. Now then, has he handed over the car? Who's his teammate?
James Hansen is Andy Newell.
Andy Newell.
With a black helmet.
Andrew may be able to help out with that, and I'm not sure if Andrew noticed a driver change. We'll have a trip down to Andrew in a moment, and in fact we can do that now. Let's head down to Andrew. Andrew, we're just considering whether or not we saw a driver change in the number 15.
Indeed you did, and if the camera was able to swivel down behind him, you'll see James Hansen actually sitting there, really red-faced actually, and James Hansen said to me the car's absolutely fine. I also had a little look at the rear tyres, plenty of meat left on those, but James Hansen, who is in the business of buying and selling very happy indeed with his drive so far, and of course another very quick man in the car now, so it could be a podium contender, no question about that.
Yeah, I think we'd have to agree with you right there, Andrew. Very much a podium contender, and also if he gets his foot in there, and he's come out, and he came out behind Harvey Stanley in the number 2. He's already gotten past Harvey Stanley, so he's not going to be delayed at all. And what this means is, having pitted, James Hansen is going to go ahead.
I think there's a lap between them.
There's a lap between them, so right, that makes sense.
Yeah,
so that's not a change for position.
No.
That makes sense, because I was wondering how Harvey Stanley would have ended up a lap behind.
Yeah, he's not been in the pits yet.
But it just shows how, Andy Newell it is now, how much Andy Newell is aware that he needs to make progress. And I'm not going to use that Formula 1 term, because I'm not really sure what it means, the undercut. But it pretty means he's going to go faster, go as fast as he can and close that gap while his competitors soak up their mandatory pit stop.
Down into the chicane, we're looking at the red coloured GT40, and that's number 9. That's now driven by Chris Livingston-Price, started by Richard Mines. And the maroon car coming into the pits, that should be Oeyenhausen-Scheerstorff, yes it is, who comes in, car number 30, from 5th place.
Let's head down to the pits, Andrew.
Yes, well, I'm just seeing Gordon Shedden climbing out of the car, and they said they was going to go long, but indeed he hasn't gone long. The Mars Griffiths is all strapped in. Having a look at the rear tyres, they've got plenty of meat on, so have the fronts. So the high-tech team there just letting the watch run down and then they give a signal. It's amazing. They use their phone to do this these days. No big stopwatch, just use the phone. Nice black lines as he accelerates away in Phil Walker's car. Gordon Shedden, meanwhile, takes his crash helmet off and looking as if he's really enjoyed it. Unfortunately, we do have a few issues with getting too close to people in the pits interviewing them. But I hope to get a nice chat with Gordon, and then I'll come back and tell you what he said. But he's just debriefing with team owner Phil Walker at the moment.
Thanks, Andrew. And over your shoulder, you'll see the number 2 of Harvey Stanley coming to the pits. Now, I know somebody who wouldn't be able to time a pit stop with their phone, and I'm sat next to him. He would have he wouldn't be able to do that at all with the phone that he's just shown me out of his pocket, but that's another story. So we've got Harvey Stanley into the pits for his pit stop. So also into the pits has come the James Cottingham car. So that's pretty much everybody now who orders a pit stop has given us a pit stop. And just look at that ominous sky. It's coming in from our left, which is across towards McLean's and Coppice, where earlier on today we had a bit of rain. But there's the 23. Now James Cottingham has got out of the car. I thought Andrew said that they were considering not changing driver. They are indeed changing driver. So the number 23 remains static on the pit lane as James Cottingham hands that car over to Andrew Smith, his teammate. So we've got driver changes pretty much across the board, Alistair. The only car that hasn't, of course, or the cars that haven't, I should say, Ollie Bryant, who was running at the front of the field. Ollie Bryant now out of this race, so that's not going to be a consideration at all. All the other cars in the top 4 are two driver entries.
Yep, and we've got Miles Griffiths now at the wheel of 37, having taken over from Gordon Shedden. And although that car hasn't yet made its way back to the top of the timing screens that we've got here, it's only because the pit stops are still unwinding, but we're expecting that car to go back into the lead. And the Andrew Smith now driving the car started by James Cottingham and driven so ably for almost the whole point up to when the pit stop window was going to close. Those two cars came in on the same lap effectively, and it was within a few minutes of the pit stop window closing, so choosing to go reasonably long, both of them. And we can see there Andrew Smith going through Coppice, down now onto the long straight, following David Cuff in the car started by Harvey Stanley. And that is effectively a battle for position.
I think that's a battle for the final podium step.
It is, isn't it? Yes.
Yeah.
Till all the pit stops unwind, you don't really know which lap they're all on. But
that's right.
The first 4 cars are all on the same lap. So, yeah, that's definitely a battle for position.
Yeah. So we're seeing that battle between the number 2 and number 23, now with different drivers on board. Harvey Stanley started at number 2, David Cuff now at the wheel, as you said, and the number 23 of Andrew Smith right on the rear bumper, if not passing. They climb the hill through Schwantz Curve, and the number 2 remains in that position. While these two go head to head, let's head down to the pits for some information from Andrew.
Yeah, thanks
Thank you, Andrew. That battle for the final podium step still ongoing. The number 2 with David Cuff and Andrew Smith in the 23 continues through Redgate. Both cars squeezing the throttle in. The 23 on the inside through Hollywood into the first of the craners. The number 2 hanging on for all it's worth, but the number 23 makes it stick. Andrew Smith goes into third place in this, the Amon Cup for GT40s. A big thank you to DK Engineering for supporting this event. Let's head back to Andrew to see if we can get a better, clearer line and we can actually hear him. Andrew, let's try again.
You couldn't hear me because I was right by a speaker apparently, and that affected it. Yeah, there's a bit of rain in the air. It's not raining, but there's sort of rain in the air at the moment. I did manage to catch a word with Gordon Sheddard as he was walking behind the pit. Very, very happy with that drive. The car's going brilliantly, absolutely loving it. He said well, it'll be a bit different next weekend. I think maybe we might be a bit closer to each other in the touring cars. I respect that GT40 a lot, but I absolutely loved it. So let's hopefully we can grab a word with him in the victory circle. But Gordon Sheddard, what a star he is, and Flash having a great run in that GT40.
He's been very flash indeed, hasn't he, in that GT40. The race isn't quite over yet though, Andrew, and I hope we haven't given him the hex of the commentator. There's still 27 minutes remaining. And yes, I did mention that he had the BTCC driver's manual on the passenger seat of that GT40, and he didn't have to open it, thankfully, and commendable both from himself and Harvey Stanley, who were absolutely on the very edge of everything in those cars, and they did not touch. So a big massive round of applause for some great racing here this afternoon.
And we've got Nigel Greensaul now in number 3. We just caught a quick glimpse of him in the shot there in the background, and he's unlapping himself from David Cuff because they are a lap apart. But now Nigel Greensaul is on board, massively experienced driver in just about everything. He's driven from Formula 1 cars to GT40s today and everything in between, and he's a very quick car on the track. So although he's not taking positions, he is unlapping himself. But we're focusing now on car number 23, which is Andrew Smith from Edinburgh, who has taken over from James Cottingham in the 23 car, which is running in third place. Ahead of them is Andy Newell in the 15 car, GT40, and then ahead of them, of course, Miles Griffiths, the leader, in the car started by Flash Gordon, as they come down into a lovely line there from Nigel Greensaul. He must have driven every track in the country hundreds and hundreds of times.
In all sorts of machinery, though.
Everything, yeah. He actually held the outright lap record at many British circuits a few years ago, because he was one of the leading drivers in the Boss formula, which was for ex-Formula 1 cars, national series. And of course those cars very quick indeed, and you saw his name as the outright lap record holder in a number of places, and you can see now he's quicker than the car ahead, which is in third place. And will he try and go through on braking? He'll be very not deferential, but very careful, because he knows he's not in the battle with 23, he's a lap down. But on the other hand, Andrew Smith knows that he's not racing with Nigel Greensaul, and so he gave him space. I've
got to say though, Greensaul there was very decisive.
Absolutely.
He did not leave anything open to question. Andrew Smith knew exactly this car's coming, and quite rightly, he didn't have to race him. So, but he knew he was coming. He knew, don't turn in, mate, I'm coming. And that's exactly the sort of driving that we would expect from someone of Nigel Greensaul's experience and ability. Just to give everybody an idea of where we are with under 25 minutes remaining, Gordon Sheddon and now Miles Griffiths at the wheel of the 37 have a lead of 5.6 seconds from the number 15 car of, first it was James Hanson, now it's Andy Newell at the wheel of that one. They've eked out a massive gap of almost 17 seconds. I'm not quite sure how they did that. Andrew Smith now at the wheel of the 23, having taken the car over from James Cottingham. And then the number 2, further 2.5 seconds behind in 4th place, after Harvey Stanley gave the car over to David Cuff. Great drive from both of those drivers so far. 5th spot is the Marcus Oinhausen Seerstorff, number 30. Marcus choosing to do the race himself. He's a couple of laps off the lead lap in 5th spot. And then in 6th we've just been talking about this car. The Tariq Mahmood started the car number 3, and Nigel Greensaul now at the wheel and going very, very quickly indeed. In fact, Greensaul puts in the fastest lap of the race overall. So he beats all of the lap times of the cars ahead of him. 1 minute 15.251 is now the lap record, not the lap record, the fastest lap of the race. And he's just moved ahead of the Hartogs and Nuttall car number 18. So that's a position up the field into 6th. Hartogs and Nuttall in 7th, and they are a further 15 seconds behind. And then we've got in 8th spot Richard Mines and I can never remember his teammate's name.
Chris.
It's Chris Livingston Price in the number 9 in 9th. And then of course we've got Ollie Bryant, who has retired that number 10, and then the Raw and Thorn number 7, which is still running. However, it lost a lot of time in the gravel trap at the start of this race, but it's 15 laps down off the leader and 3 laps down off the car ahead of him. So he'll, sorry, not 3 laps. Yes, he is 3 laps down off the Bryant car. So he should overtake Ollie Bryant in the overall order. And of course, the number 5, the Wood car, into the pits with an engine problem is what we think. And that concludes our 11 car field. Great start for the Amon Cup, I think. Wouldn't it be great to tack a few more GT40s onto the grid for the coming historic festival season?
I think, just if you're thinking, what am I going to do with my GT40 this year, then just give James Cottingham a ring at DK Engineering and say you'd like to enter in one of these races, because that's the hope, that the grid will develop. It's not something that's going to happen immediately with these sorts of cars, but a great start, as you say, 11 cars, a very good grid indeed, and we've had an absolutely wonderful race, and we've got a battle brewing. I'm just going to wait for Andy Newell to go over the line. Oh, it's about the same. Yeah, Andy Newell is keeping the gap first to second at just over 5 seconds. What we might say is that Miles Griffiths is aware of where Andy Newell is, and he's keeping the gap ahead at 5 seconds. It's one or the other, but it's still close, and we've only got to see a problem for Miles Griffiths in the form of maybe somebody slow in front of him and he has to back off. That 5 seconds will just disappear. So we've still got a race on our hands for the last 21 and a bit minutes of this Amon Cup, which is remembering the great effort by the Shelby American team to win Le Mans in 1966 with the great Chris Amon, the New Zealander, partnered with his fellow New Zealander Bruce McLaren, and they took the win, which was, we mentioned earlier, just dramatised last year, or was it the year before? I forget. 2020 didn't exist,
2020,
did it? 2019 probably, because we went to the cinema to see it, so it must have been 2019. Anyway, great. I really enjoyed the film. Yeah, okay, you can pick holes in it because we're enthusiasts, but I thought it was a very good representation of the efforts made by Ford and the Shelby team to take the win away from the incumbent Ferrari, who had won in 64, and it was Ken Miles and Denny Hulme who came second. Another New Zealander, Denny Hulme, in second place. Ken Miles, the British American resident who worked with Shelby to great things, but unfortunately lost his life testing the car which became the Mark IV. It was known as the J car then, and we saw a car slow then. That's 23. Oh wow, what's happened here?
Yeah,
into the pits. Andrew, you better rush up the pit lane, find out what is wrong with Andrew Smith coming into the pit lane.
Now remember, this is the number 23 car that led this race for pretty much from the start until Gordon Shedden finally found a way by. See Andrew just making his way over there. Crew go to work. They're trying to get the driver's door open. The passenger door, so to speak, is open. They're not giving any attention to the engine bay, and so it's I'm wondering exactly what the problem is. So the 23 out of contention.
We're thinking it might be something to do with the door.
Yeah, they're trying to get the door open. I don't know why they would need the door open though during a race. We'll sort that out in the paddock later.
Well, Andrew's there, and it looks like he's got a very long hammer, so maybe he could. I know it's the microphone, but
he does look like he's got a hammer about to go. So I'm not now that the maybe the door's coming open.
Yeah. You know, earlier on I saw that bubble was slightly higher. There was a gap, and I wondered whether it was just the way it was fitted. But I wonder whether that's the problem. Andrew's there on the scene; we can see him there, so he's chatting with the team now, and he's going to report to us very shortly as to what the problem is with that car.
Yeah, that's well spotted, Duncan. The bubble is slightly raised, so that's going to cause all sorts of buffeting problems. In fact, they're bringing the car in. So the 23, not just out of contention, but out of this race completely. And Andrew will confirm in a moment when he finds out from the team if our assumption or presumption is correct. That's now out of fourth spot, and that's going to allow Marcus Oyhausen-Seerstoff into that fourth spot. He's out of contention for the final step of the podium somewhat. And I did say this when we were talking to Gordon Shedden in the Parc Fermé. We had 27 minutes to go, and 10 minutes later we lose one of our main contenders. Let's head down to Andrew though, who's going to shed exactly the amount of light we need. Andrew.
Yeah, the door's a complete red herring actually. What Frank Gardner wants to drive is a box full of neutrals with no ideas. He's got a couple of gears still working, but it's definitely a gearbox problem with that GT40. What a problem. So gearbox problem for the GT40, end of the day for them, but what a great run.
Yeah, thanks Andrew. I like that term, red herring. It would just fooling us.
It would have been very appropriate if it had been the door, because if you recall in 1966 Ken Miles came into the pits with the door which wouldn't shut because they ran across the track then to get into the cars. He did the first lap with the door slightly open, came in, had the door shut, and then but for a bit of Ford politics could well have taken the win. And many people think that Ken Miles and Denny Hulme should have won the 1966 race, but Henry Ford wanted a dead heat, which in the end, due to French politics in the reading of the regulations, they gave the win to Bruce McLaren and Chris Amon, because he'd started further down the line of cars in the echelon formation and therefore had gone slightly further in the race, even though they crossed the line very, very close together.
Was it Bruce McLaren who they say that the speculation, the rumour and speculation is that Bruce McLaren just eked the car slightly ahead of the Ken Miles car to cross the line.
It depends which book you read.
Yeah, it does. That's what I mean. Yeah, it's like nothing sort of definitive.
I think it's true to say that Ken Miles was told to slow down. They were quite a long way ahead of the McLaren Amon car, but anyway, it's all in history now. But the race started badly for the number one Ken Miles car because the door wouldn't shut, so that would have been quite appropriate in this. We're looking now at the leading car, which is driven by Miles Griffiths. They've had no problems at all. And through Redgate, and now a 7.7 second lead over Andy Newell. It was 5.2 for a number of laps, so it's just opened out a little bit now.
So that's Griffiths now bringing home the 37. He's got 15 minutes remaining. And then we've got Newell in the 15, 7 seconds behind the Harvey Stanley David Cuff number 2, now taking that third and final step of the podium in this race. They're about 30 seconds behind in 15, so it's a little spaced down, not massively, but these three have moved away from the rest of the field. And there's the recovering number 7. They're just having enjoying the drive in that number 7. That's Mike Thorne and Robert Raw as the number 30 comes through. That's the car that's now inherited that 4th spot, and that retirement from the race of the number 23, that's allowed the Mahmood and Nigel Greensaul car up into 5th, and Greensaul still the owner of the fastest lap of the race, 1 minute 15.251, and I'm not sure anyone's going to be prepared to go faster or faster than that at this stage of proceedings.
Well, Oyenhausen-Scheerstorp has got to keep an eye on his lap times, because Nigel Greensaul is only 14 seconds behind and is running, well, if you take the last lap as representative, he was 5 seconds quicker. Now that could be because Oyenhausen-Scheerstorp got caught behind a back marker, but there we're looking at number 30, so that's the car in 4th place. We need to look a little further back for Nigel Greensaul, who's pulling back through the field after taking over from Tarek Mahmood.
And they're going to be in the same shot very soon. In fact, that's possibly...
No, I think that's
that's not.
The
That's
23, is it?
That's the
37.
Leader. That's
Yeah,
the 37.
yeah.
Leader coming round onto the tail of the 30. Last time across the line. We'll check it this time by as the number 30 goes through. We're looking for the number 3 and how far behind. Now it was 5 seconds. That looks longer than 5 seconds. He should be just coming into the chicane now, the number 3. Nigel Greensaul crosses the line, in fact.
10 seconds.
So it's down from 14 to 10 seconds.
Yeah, so he's taken nearly 5 seconds that lap as well. So we're going to see these two cars together within a couple of laps, aren't we?
He's actually on the road just behind the leader now, who's just going through the old hairpin. Just further back on the lap, coming through the crane of curves, will be the number 3 of Nigel Greensaul. And that's the only race for position that we've got developing as the leader. Car 37 comes up to lap the number 30, and Oyenhausen-Scheerstorp. There's the number. There it is. Well spotted, our camera crew. There's the number 15. The number 3 of Nigel Greensaul, who's coming up to unlap himself from the number 15. So, cars very, very similar liveried, aren't they? White with the Ford stripes.
And what Nigel Greensaul needs to do is make his way past the car that's a lap ahead of him. So he's not racing with him, but in order to catch Oyenhausen-Scheerstorp, he's got to get by. He's done exactly the same move as he did about 20 minutes ago when he went through on the inside of the chicane. And of course, Andy Newell, experienced driver, just gave him that room, let him through, knows he's not racing with him. Lovely to see, as you say, those two very similar liveries coming down into Redgate there. What a fabulous shot that is.
Gap down to 6.6 from 10 seconds. So even though he had to outbrake Andy Newell into the chicane, he still managed to reduce that gap to the car ahead of him. So Oyenhausen-Scheerstorp, Marcus Oyenhausen-Scheerstorp at the wheel of the 30, just 6.6 seconds up the road from Nigel Greensaul, who is currently through Schwantz Curve and up towards McLean's. There's the number 30 in McLean's now, and there is the number 3. So they're very, very shortly going to be in the same camera shot. Into Coppice goes the number 30. Here comes the number 3, just tops the hill. And there's Nigel Greensaul, 6.6 seconds across the line last time by. Let's see what it is this time as they come back down towards us on the pit straight now. We know he's the last of the late breakers into the chicane, but he can take the conventional textbook race line. Stays out wide, cuts across the two apices, and then crosses the line. Let's see what the gap is. Oh, heavens, Alistair.
1.7.
1.7 seconds. That means the next time we see those cars, I think those positions will be reversed. 10 minutes remaining.
There's the number 30 is out at the top of the hill, difficult to pick out in the gathering gloom. Yes, definitely is. You can tell Nigel Greensaul is behind. The car was in a completely different position on the track. It was four-wheel drifting. He's just got that car so beautifully balanced as Nigel. And now he's coming up on Marcus Oyenhausen-Scheerstorp as they come up the hill towards Schwantz Curve. Will he take him at the Matt Neal overtaking position into McLean's, or will he leave it till a little bit later? I think he's going to leave it there because it's quite tight. No, he takes a tight line. He's done it, yeah.
he's very decisive. He kind of lets the driver ahead know exactly where he's coming through. It's kind of like he gets him on the phone. Right, okay, I'm coming through at McLean's. Stay out the way. And you can't, as a driver being overtaken by Nigel Greensaul, you can't mistake his move because he's so precise and decisive. Bang, I'm coming through.
So that's a change for position in the last 10 minutes of the race. So Nigel Greensaul will move up to 4th place. Marcus Oyenhausen-Scheersdorf moves down to 5th place. And Greensaul is a lap down on David Cuff ahead. So I don't think he's going to get any further. It won't slow him down, but I think he's reached the point, the best point he can get to. As we go back to the leader, this is Miles Griffiths coming through the old hairpin, coming down through the sweepers, and we're looking there at Nigel Greensaul and then Marcus Oyenhausen-Scheersdorf just letting the car that's running in 2nd place, that's a lap ahead now, that's Andy Newell, go through at the old hairpin. Coming up now to McLean's, Andy Newell, 2nd place in car number 15, comes through. And there is the very well driven Nigel Greensaul car, which has made its way all the way to 4th.
Under 8 minutes remaining in this race then, and the Miles Griffiths car leads by just under 10 seconds. It's just gone through. And once again, we've mentioned a big thank you to DK Engineering, and as we get towards not just the end of this race, we're kind of getting towards the end of today's racing. We're going to be back tomorrow with a full day, qualifying starting at 9:10, but we go live again with our first race coverage on the live stream starting at 11 a.m. with racing starting at 11:25. So we'll be back tomorrow to bring you the final day of the 2021 Donington Historic Festival. And if it's half as good as today, Alistair, I think the day will fly.
Yes.
Because I know we're coming up to 7 p.m, but it doesn't feel like it. In fact, for the sake of Nigel Greensaul, let's extend this by about 30 minutes, I'd say, and see how far he can get up the field.
Well, we could have a break for an hour and then come back in the dark and have another one.
That's a great idea. We'll need to put that to the organisers.
So we've got Nigel Greensaul, we're following him. He is the fastest car on the track by some half a second or so, faster than the leaders. 16.7 was his last lap, and he just consistently puts lap times in within a tenth or so of each other every lap, unless he gets caught behind a back marker or whatever, but just keeps the laps coming. And he's got, of course, the fastest lap of the race as well, a 15.251 for Nigel Greensaul, number 3 and 4th place.
Just turning into Redgate now, and now that he's got a clear track ahead of him, you will see a driving masterclass, really. He really knows, and the car just behaving in a kind of a neutral way. These cars sort of err on the edge of oversteer, and it's the way that Nigel can control that and just eke out. That's why this number 3 car is the owner of the fastest lap of this race. It's been driven in a very, very acclaimed style. That's not to take anything away from all of our other drivers in this race. We've seen some fantastic racing in this 80-minute event, and if this has anything to it bodes very well for the future of the Amon Cup for GT40s. Like you said, Alistair, if you've got a GT40 in the garage, then this is where you need to come and race it. I'm going to be spreading the word when I eventually get back to the States. There's a lot of GT40s run with HSR. It'd be great to get some foreign interest in this event like we used to have. Remember when the world was different? we used to have. Hopefully we'll get back to those days shortly. Everything's going in the right direction, certainly here.
Last lap for Nigel Greensaul was the 16.1, the one before that, a 16.0, so he's still in the low 16s, whereas in fact the leader has just dropped into the 16s with a 1:16.9, but everybody else 17s, 18s, 19s, so it's really just stroking that car around Nigel Greensaul. And we're now looking at the car just ahead actually of Nigel Greensaul. This is David Cuff in car number 2, started by Harvey Stanley, had that stirring battle in the early parts of the race with just about everybody else in the field. And across the line with 4¼ minutes to go, we've got David Cuff in 3rd place in car number 2. Very distinctive livery, the dark blue with the red tops to the front wheel arches.
Yeah, and very, as it comes into view at the top of Hollywood, and distinctive with those red wings topped off by the 2 bright headlights. And as we go into the early evening, the light, we're not exactly anywhere near sundown, but that light is it's quite unique insofar as it's a typical spring, English spring evening with a little bit of cloud cover, and that distinctive light at this time of year that we get sort of before the sun has reached the anywhere near the horizon. 3½ minutes remain, so we're getting towards checkered flag time for this car of Miles Griffiths. He shared the car with Gordon Shedden, who basically took his time, didn't he? He just worked away at the cars ahead of him and in front of him, and he just worked away and finally made some fantastic passing moves to put that car in a very strong situation going into the pit stops. I've got to mention the number 23 team though, the number 23, James Cottingham and Andrew Smith. James went off from the start and had a great race at the head of this field and was in a very commanding position for quite a chunk of time, really. Certainly well over ½ an hour, and then a problem with the car's gearbox, bringing that car in and putting it out of contention. Same can be said for Ollie Bryant, who retired the car early on. He's about 28 laps completed, 12 laps to go for Ollie Bryant's retirement. And the car in 2nd place, the number 15, that's the Andy Newell, James Hansen car. It's Andy Newell at the wheel of this car for the final couple of laps. And of course the car in the final podium position, the Harvey Stanley, David Cuff, number 2, just crossing the line there, as Miles Griffiths brings the car down to the chicane with a lap time of about 1:15. We've probably got 2 more laps of racing, Alistair.
I think he's just going to get across in time. Yeah, he's doing about a 1:17 last time around, so yeah, just about 1 extra lap. So we're probably on the penultimate lap now as they come down into the Redgate corner. To be honest, Alan Crook wouldn't dare put the flag out early, would he? He wouldn't dare.
Are you kind of challenging him to that?
I know he won't.
I'm pretty sure Gordon Shedden and Miles Griffiths wouldn't complain having to do 1 less lap. But there's still only 17 seconds in it, and over a race distance of 80 minutes, that's a pretty tight finish. All it would take is for Miles' mind to wander, start thinking about dinner, and just missing that breaking point, and then he would certainly have the number 15 Ford GT40 very much in his mirrors. I'm not sure he's going to make that mistake. He's coming down to the final 30 seconds on the watch, on the stopwatch for race distance. However, by our estimation, he's probably going to cross the line with about 10, maybe 13 seconds. Less than that, actually.
7, I would say.
Yeah.
Here he comes through the chicane and across the line. No quivering of the checkered flag. Pit boards go out, so 1 lap to go.
I think there was 5 seconds on that.
Yeah.
I think there was 5.
So we get this extra lap. We can see a good shot there into the cabin with Miles Griffiths working away at the wheel. On to his final lap in the car that's most likely to take the checkered flag, and a gap of just over 17 seconds, just under 18 seconds back to the 2nd placed car of Andy Newell, started by James Hansen. who comes up through the left-hander at Schwantz, and the right-hander at McLean's, and then along the top to the highest point of the circuit to Coppice. Blind entry, just turn in, you can't see the apex, just turn in at the crest, and then that takes you into the first apex. The second one, they don't seem to worry too much about that. These cars, they seem to prefer the wider line, which takes them, perhaps gives them more speed onto the long straight. But down into the chicane for the last time for Miles Griffiths.
And there's the checkered flag to greet him as he comes out of there, moves across to the pit wall, flashing of the lights to bring to an end the first day of the Donington Historic Festival, and a very fine win for the number 37. Gordon Shedden started the car, Miles Griffith finished it, kept the pressure on everybody, and a very fine win indeed in the Amon Cup for Ford GT40s. He'll be making his way around as the rest of the field finish, and that's the number 15 who will finish second. Andy Newell finishes the car with James Hansen starting. And then we've got the third place car just about to cross the line now, as we wait for Harvey Stanley and David Cuff to take their checkered flag. There he is now, coming out of the chicane. That's not the number 2 quite yet though, is it? No, we still have a little time to wait. I think he's just on the back straight now. Mahmood and Greensaul finish a very fine 4th, and Nigel Greensaul's sterling drive giving him fastest lap of this race so far. Marcus Oinhausen-Seerstorff will finish 5th. There's David Cuff across the line in the number 2 to confirm that final step of the podium. So Marcus Oinhausen-Seerstorff finishes 5th in the number 30. It's the Hardogs and Nuttall number 18 will finish 6th. The Mines Livingston Price car number 9 finished 7th. Raw and Thorne finished in 8th, and they enjoyed driving their GT40 after a troubled start. A retirement was the 23, classified 9th of Cottingham and Smith. The number 10 was also a retirement, as was the number 5. The leader, Gordon Shedden and Miles Griffiths, I should say. Miles Griffiths already with us in the pit lane for the final time this evening. Like I mentioned, we are back with qualifying in the morning. However, full coverage of our race programme beginning at 11 o'clock in the morning, and we'll be bringing you some equally exciting racing. And if it's half as good as what we've seen today in the first day 1 of the Donington Historic Festival, it's going to be well worth looking at. And a big thank you once again for all our supporters, the support from DK Engineering, Motor Racing Legends and the Royal Automobile Club that's put their support behind the live stream, and our festival partners, Dunlop Goodyear, Silverstone Auctions, Motor Racing Legends, Historic Promotions. A big thank you for all of the organisers behind putting this historic festival on, and a big thank you, I know you're not quite finished, but a big thank you to our marshals out there and our race officials who've been hard at work with what I can only describe as a very, very slick race meeting. Everything has been very well organised, and the very few race stoppages have been very small in time. So a big thank you, and we'll see you all tomorrow, marshals wise. We're still not quite finished though. We've got some podium interviews to come, and a bit of a rundown. Shedden and Griffiths took the win, 62 laps completed. They had an 18-second gap to the Hansen-Newell car in second. Then we had Stanley Cuff finishing third. Mahmood and Greensaul was fourth. Marcus Hansen-Seerstorff was fifth. Hartogs and Nuttall sixth. Mainz and Livingston Price was seventh. We had the Raw and Thorne car finishing eighth. Cottingham and Smith was the first of our retirements, and Ollie Bryant was finishing, or didn't finish, but was classified in 10th. And 11th was Tony Wood in the number 5 in 11th.
Which was an engine failure, apparently.
An engine failure, was it, completely? So we're just waiting for word for Andrew Marriott, who will be... Let's head straight down there, because Andrew's ready for us.
You're going to start on the car again.
So down here, we're right by the DK tent now for these final interviews. We're going to get Miles Griffiths to come in. Miles, you made history then, the first winner of a Chris Amon race for these GT40s. Quite a bit of pressure on you after Gordon Shedden went so quickly, but you held on and you did a great job.
Yeah, to be fair, Gordon did all the hard work. My job was just bring it home, which we did, and really happy to be here. It's a great event, and yeah, very happy to be the first winner of the Amon Cup.
No problems with the car at all?
Well, after a pro driver's been in it, the brakes were a bit lacking, but no, it was fine. All good. All good.
Well, very well done. Congratulations. I say you go in the record books for winning the first of these races. You much enjoyed and very well. Well, Gordon's gone rushing home, hasn't he?
Yeah, he's got to get back to Scotland, so yeah, he'll be halfway to the airport by now, I think.
Okay, we're going to walk with me, guys, and let's catch up with the team that finished second here. We got James Hanson and Andy Newell. Well done, lads. So you did a good job there.
Thank you. Yes, I think it was good. First time out in the car, so.
Oh, was it really?
Yeah, we did 4 laps this morning or something, so it was good.
Well, Andy, how about this? We usually see you in a Cobra, don't we?
Lots of things, really.
Yeah, lots of everything.
No, it was great. James did a brilliant job. Got us up the front.
Fluff the start.
That's all right, man. Something happened. We don't know. It's either broken a anti-roll bar drop link or whatever. But we couldn't get on the power. It wouldn't stop. So it was just get it home, basically. But
now, usually with you, the cars you race are for sale. Is it for sale? You're going to hang?
No, not this one.
Okay, well done.
All right, thank you.
Where's the rest of our runners here? Who have we got? Well, no, I think we're going to have to leave it at that. We'll just see a very famous race over here, Steve Soper, who's going to be racing tomorrow. Hello, Steve. We ought to have you in a GT40, mate.
Yeah, it was good, wasn't it? Fun. Would have been.
You up for it tomorrow? Going to have a good result?
Well, with the Sierra, I hope so. But we've got all those flipping Nissan. What are they called? Godzillas or something in it. About 4 of those.
Let's see what happens.
Yeah.
Great to have Steve Soper here, of course, factory driver with Ford and BMW for many years. So, a great way to end today's race. We're going to have some more great competition tomorrow, I'm sure. I've had fun down in here in the pit lane and in the victory circle. So, we'll see you all tomorrow and good night.
Thank you. Good night to Andrew Marriott, and many thanks for your hard work down there in the pit lane. And what a bit of an appetite whetter that was from Steve Soper, just mentioning a little bit of what we've got tomorrow. Alistair, a quick reflection on today. I think that was a great first day. And for me, a big congratulations to the organisational part of this festival.
Yeah, given the difficulty of doing anything these days, I think to get this event put together, and thanks again to everyone involved with organising this. It's been a wonderful day's racing, and if it wasn't for the lack of crowds and the fact that we're doing it would be great to do a live stream anyway, but we'd normally be doing the circuit commentary. You wouldn't know, would you?
No.
It's great grids, really good range of drivers, some really experienced drivers here. And wonderful to the team that put all this together, and we've got another day of it tomorrow.
Absolutely, and I can't wait. And I bet you can't wait at home. I hope you've enjoyed our first day's coverage on the live stream. We'll be back tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. to bring you another day of exciting Donington Historic Festival.